Hey everyone, welcome to Friday, July 1st, our weekly office hours for Replay. I'm Cecilia Martinez. I'm the community lead here at Replay. You're probably very familiar with me if you're watching this stream, but in case you're not, I'm the community lead here, and I do our office hours streams, work on our documentation, and work with our users to help them get the most from their debugging. And so, yeah, really excited to have today a guest with us from the Replay team. And just before we kick things off, oh, hey, Mark Erickson's in the chat. Nice to see you. So yeah, just to let you know, depending on where you're watching this from, we do stream out to multiple locations. So you can catch us at Replay.io on Twitch and Twitter, or you can also see the stream at replay.io/YouTube. YouTube is also where we have all of our past episodes. So if you missed anything, just want to catch up on all things Replay, you can check out our YouTube to watch past streams. Awesome. So yeah, and then you can also comment in the chat if you have any questions for us or for the team. You can comment on Twitter, Twitch, or YouTube. We'll be checking all three. So feel free to let us know if you have any questions. We'll be happy to chat through those. So awesome. So today I wanted to bring on a guest today, and then if you are here from Twitter, you probably already know. But yeah, I wanted to go ahead and introduce Travis. Hey, Travis. How are you today?
Hey, how's it going? Doing great. Yeah, it's a nice day outside, and yeah, enjoying it so far. How's your day going?
Yeah. I can't complain. You know, it's been raining all week in Atlanta, but we needed it. So, and honestly, the weather usually here is really great. So, it's been good. And so, Travis, this is your second time on stream or third time? I'm trying to remember now.
Second time, yeah.
Second time, nice.
Second time.
Yeah. And so, for people who haven't seen you on stream before, can you tell us, give us a quick intro about what you do on the team and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a bit of a generalist of sorts, so I do design and development, and so I've been kind of really utilizing, I think, that here at Replay so far. And so, yeah, kind of go all the way to design side of things, and I'll be in Figma, like maybe in the start of the day, and then at the end of the day, I might be in code, working on a prototype, and similar to kind of what we'll talk about today. Yeah, just like storyboarding ideas and things like that.
Yeah.
So I did a lot of design and development.
Design development. And so so you joined Replay in May, I remember, because I think your first week was when we went to Reactathon, and that was a lot of fun. But what was your what's been your background before joining Replay? What have you worked on?
I started off like traditional graphic design, and then like slowly got into web development, worked at marketing agencies and things of that nature. So it's been really fun to like pull on those like experiences again, because I've been doing product development and design for a long time. So like the last like 7 years, which has been great, but also like marketing sites are very fun. And so it's been really fun to like get back into that realm of things, and kind of, yeah, like all the skills I've learned since the last time I was doing marketing stuff. But yeah, so like design systems and things like that. So yeah, when I was in product development, doing a lot of design systems work. Yeah. A lot of
Awesome.
animations and all that stuff. I love all that stuff.
Yeah, I know that some of the things that you've been talking about are definitely like at Replay, implementing a design system, doing some documentation around like the different components and that we use and things like that. And so, yeah, so a lot of the things that I've seen so far have been really interesting. And that's kind of why, so I know that you came on stream when you first joined and talked a little bit about what you are planning on doing. And you've been working on this kind of really cool project for Replay. And I wanted to have you on today to talk and kind of share through that. Yes, Travis the magician is what's in the chat right now, and I have to put that on screen because it's absolutely true. I like to say that Travis is the one person who's going to actually help me like make me love CSS, because
Yeah.
I I've struggled. I like to say I've known CSS for 15 years, but I don't actually know it, and even after all that time. And so, yeah, that's kind of what I think. I know you do a lot of things, but in my mind, you're like the CSS
Totally.
magician. And so we took a look at some of the code for overboard.dev, which we'll talk about here in just a second, last week. And I remember looking at it and being like, I actually know what's going on here. I feel like I understand this. It doesn't feel like I'm reading like runes, like which is how I normally feel with CSS now. Um, so that's awesome. Yeah. And so I guess could you tell us a little bit about like kind of that project that you've been working on?
Yeah, definitely. So we're working on our new marketing page currently, which I'm sure you talked about last week. And so we came up with this idea of an overboard app. We wanted to showcase kind of what Replay is all about. And so we came up with this hero story about a hoverboard store that is not working and it has some bugs, and so we have to fix it. And so we originally wanted to do a video and have like kind of a video playing in the marketing page. But I wanted to be a little bit more ambitious and push for a scrolly telling experience because it felt very like ripe to turn into a scrolly telling experience. And yeah, I haven't done anything like that since like these marketing days, like probably like 7 years ago now. And so things have gotten a lot better, and I wanted to kind of play around in that space and see what could be done. Uh, yeah, and so started to like storyboard this out traditionally for this video, and so I think that's how it kind of naturally turned into a scrolly telling experience because it was kind of obvious of like how we can turn these each frame into different to like animate in between them and do storytelling. And interesting enough, I feel like I've there's a lot of articles online about scrolly telling, but nothing in depth, and maybe something we can even like write afterwards of like how the way we've approached it. It just feels very hard to do scrolly telling stuff. Like it's hard to kind of keep in your head and even prototype out, and I can do frames in Figma, but then I get them into code, right? And it's kind of hard to like how do I like visualize how the story is actually going to animate between things. And so yeah, the prototype I'll share today is kind of uh, culmination of all of that thinking of like what can we do with like new browser APIs that are on the scene. How do we make it easy to iterate through these story frames that we have, and then yeah, animate between them and make them look beautiful in a scrolly telling experience.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
So,
can. Yeah.
oh, no, sorry.
Right.
Yeah. So I guess before you dig into that, one thing that I kind of wanted to just do is in case people aren't familiar with scrolly telling or what we're talking about. So if you haven't worked on like marketing sites or landing pages, I feel like probably a lot of people have, at least like maybe even just like a learning or demo capacity. Um, so when I think of scrolly telling, kind of one of the first examples that pops into my head is like the Remix site. I don't know if you've seen the remix.run site. And so I don't know if you have a different example, but I was thinking maybe I'd just kind of like show that really quick as an example of what it
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
that we're talking about. Okay, cool. Um, so I'll share my screen. I feel like I say that 25 million times a day. I'm going to share my screen now. Okay, so this is remix.run. And again, this is kind of like one of the first things that pops into my head. To be fair, I have to say, I have to admit this, I've never actually used Remix before, but I do love this site. So as I'm scrolling, things happen on the screen, and it's kind of like it highlights that, then it highlights that component, then it highlights that component. The stuff on the back is moving through, and then it takes me through through nested routes. And I'm not doing anything. I'm not clicking on anything. I'm not like navigating. I'm just literally scrolling. And like I'm literally, if I scroll up, and I scroll back down, and I scroll up, and things on the page kind of animate themselves. They're moving into different areas. The motion of scrolling is what's driving this storytelling. So scrollytelling, portmanteau, scroll, storytelling. Um, and this was kind of something where the first time I saw it, I was like, what is happening here? This is super cool. And you mentioned that we're redoing essentially like our new like our landing page for replay. And you talked about a hero, and that's another term I just want to like define really quick, if that's okay. So essentially, like if you have a landing page going all the way back up to the front, the hero is like this big block that is like the first thing you look at, right? And so initially we're thinking about doing like a video because replay is a very visual tool. It's all about like how you debug and look at it and inspect things. And so the idea of like initially going from the video to being able to do something like this, where we can have that narrative like throughout it, was really, really exciting to me. And so the first time I heard about it, I was like, I'm excited to see how we're going to do that, but I have no idea how to build it. And so, so that's the end result. And in making this happen, it seems like it's pretty complex. And that's what Travis is going to dig into because he has spent a lot of time over the past month or so figuring out how to make it happen in a way and then building out a tool to actually do it. So, I'll let you take over now with sharing. And
Sweet.
yeah, we can take a look.
Yeah, let's dig in. Let me open up another one real quick. Sandpack's a good example too. I think we've been very inspired by Sandpack's website, which is a great tool, by the way, if you're trying to add a bundler to your site. Let's see, establish a screen.
Some code sandbox.
Yeah.
Nice.
So can you see my screen?
Give me 1 second. Add to stream. There you are.
Sweet. All right.
It looks like I'm seeing everything too. So
okay, cool. Yeah. I was gonna just kind of like show
perfect.
Like kind of where I'm at with everything. So granted, it is still a little messy and it's like in a prototyping phase. So there's still a lot to work out, but yeah, very fun to like show off where we're at currently. And then just to give another example of a scrolly telling site, I think the Sandpack website is a really great example of this. And they actually do like interactive, like this is a sandbox in here, which is you can like change the code on and stuff, which is really fun. Like I think you could like delete the logo and it'll update, or maybe not. Yeah, but yeah, so kind of like leaning into this scrolly telling where we can like, how do we do this, right? Like, how do we get code to like move over and have this code come in and like really like try to tell this story? It's been like, it's always broken my brain, I think, of like trying to think of like, how do I code this, right? Like, do I have to say like, okay, it starts here and then I need to translate over like 100, like 300 pixels. And then this is going to like come in, right? It gets kind of confusing on how to think about like architecting those things. And there's a handful of libraries that help that like to do this. Scrollama is probably the biggest one, I would say. That seems like the primary candidate that people reach for scrolly telling sites. And so I can go with that real quick just to show, which is a pretty cool library to do this. I wanted to push it a little bit further on what we could do. So this relies on the intersection observer API, which is a performant way to do scroll based things because it's off of the main thread. Whereas if we do like an on scroll handler, we're going to be like computing that scroll position or whatever we're doing with that scroll position every frame on the main thread. And so something really nice about libraries like this are using intersection observer to make that more performant.
Because that was my big question when I saw this is like, how is it so smooth? You know what I mean? Because that's the thing that I would imagine that there's things have to load, and sometimes it's a little like, I think the word is jank, right? It's like it's janky. Yeah. So that I feel like the performance must be such a big component of that.
Yeah, especially with scrolling, like any scroll based animation. So the agency Basement that we're working with, they use GSAP, and so that's something we'll probably end up using in this as well, like paired with the solution we're working on. And GSAP will handle these performance considerations for you. Most of these libraries are thinking, I think, about performance when doing these scroll animations, and it's kind of why there's like a library wrapper around it. And so what I wanted to work with was scroll timeline. And so that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today. And so scroll timeline is a new-ish proposal. It's been around for a little bit now. I think this polyfill actually came out in like 2018. Yeah, about 3 years ago. So it's been around for a bit, but I haven't seen too many people talking about it. And so I've kind of had it in the back of my head. I've always wanted to use it. And coming into this, like having to build a scrolly telling experience, I'm like, oh my gosh, here's a perfect use case. I can like start to play with this API finally and have like something valid to use against it. And so it's very simple, which is really nice. I just took the dist file, so the dist there's no it's not published to npm yet. I filed an issue. Hopefully, it can get published to npm. But just copied the dist file over and started hacking in a code sandbox to get this going. And so yeah, that's what I'll show off right now. And so if we go over to the Overboard app, I've been playing with this scroll time and timeline API paired with React, and this like trying to find a declarative way to build these storyboards or scrollytelling out of storyboards. And so the concept I landed on was having this idea of just like a fully declarative API. I think things like framer motion have showed if we can be as declarative as possible, similar to design tools, right? Design tools are fully declarative. How can we apply that in other areas, especially like in web development and in a model like React that's already declarative? And so the thing I started off with was just regular components. Like how do we I know how to like manipulate components. I can add props to them and change them around. And so the idea there was like we can get these things into a storyboard format, look through them, be able to work on them similar as we would do with a traditional like storyboarding. Um, and I don't have them pulled up, but we had like frames that we went through in Figma and have like kind of taken the storyboard and really tried to like work through it. I think like normally as you would for like a video and things like that. So that's how it naturally came from a video into this.
Are you able
And
to
so this
make
is just like,
the window bigger, by the way? Just um, like the
oh,
window that you're
is it
in
a little small?
currently?
Yeah.
Well, it's like part of the screen. I'm just curious if there's a way to make it any bigger or not. But
I
if
think
not,
that
that's
I don't want to
okay.
break my demo, so
No. You're good. I'm sorry. No,
yeah, I'm gonna
it's good.
keep it.
I can
Just
see
yeah,
it. I can see it. It's
yeah,
good.
yeah. I should. Sorry, I should be bigger.
That's good.
But yeah, so working through this, we got each like frame. We can kind of see like, okay, we want to transition
Okay.
from. We start off with the spy button. We want to go into an error state. Like there's an error in this application, and now we want to kind of go into the app and start showcasing the apps. Like obviously, this is very, very like early stages of this. It'll look a lot better as the weeks progress. Which I'm excited about, but kind of the engine is what we were like working on this week, and so kind of fun to like play around with that. And then, so to show this off, so now that we have these storyboards, the idea was we can interpolate between them. So similar to if you've ever heard about flip-based animations, which stands for first, last, invert, and play. It allows, it's a technique to do performant animations, and so we kind of get the inverse of each frame between like each frame and interpolate between them. Excuse me. And so I'm applying a similar technique here. I originally tried to do like an actual flip technique, which you can kind of you can look into if you Google like flip
Yeah, I
animation
think I
technique.
saw a recent tweet where you said that that's what we use for the unicorn picker that pops up in the console, right?
Yeah,
That
yeah, exactly. So that's the framer motion doing that. So framer motion uses this flip technique to do performant animations.
Nice. Yeah, I think Excalibur uses it too, because after I saw that tweet, and I saw the article that you posted, which was like a breakdown of the technique, I
Mhm.
recognized some of the function names from an Excalibur bug, and Excalibur obviously does a lot of like animation of the resizing and stuff, and it was within their
Yeah.
resize element component, and it was using like the same functionality where it had like scale X, and it was like doing the math on it to make them. And I was
Oh,
like, I
perfect.
think it's the same thing. So yeah, I went into a little bit of a deep, like a rabbit hole with flip animations after I saw your tweet on it, and so it was super
Nice.
interesting stuff. But anyway, don't want to digress, but I just wanted to comment on that really quick. But
No, yeah. That it's a really cool technique that a lot of platforms I believe utilize. So even like iOS and Android, I think in some regards, kind of like utilize this flip technique. But yeah, it's a way to like the basics of it is we use transforms and scale because they're more performant, and we mimic like a width transition or width or height transition, and so it'll scale down, but it's not actually doing a width or height transition. It's doing a scale transition. So yeah, if you look more into it, I think it makes a little bit more sense. What I'm showing off today isn't doing that yet. I think I was a little ambitious on trying to get that to work, and so we're just doing width and height animations of what I'll show today. But yeah, just to kind of talk through that, like where we're at with like performance wise and like how we'd want to make sure this is most performant because it's a scroll based animation. It's things like we're thinking about. So to get into it, I can uncheck this storyboard mode. So that storyboard mode, as we could go through these frames, was kind of the idea to like figure out how we can go through these, and now we can just start to interpolate through them. And so this is kind of where like the magic part happens. And so now we're just interpolating between each frame that you just saw in that storyboard mode. But this allows us to be fully
Uh,
declarative, and I don't have to sit here and figure out like, oh, well, like the position goes over to the left on this side, or the even in the case of like the button here, like this like kind of micro animation, like I don't have to worry too much about what's going on. I can sit here and go through each storyboard frame and kind of hack on each one, and then go back into this mode and then see how it's going to animate. Um, and so yeah, this is kind of like the big thing we've been working on as far as like being able to prototype really quickly, because once you're in that phase of prototyping, like you're always going to change things, right? Like once it's in the like almost not like final state, but it's in code, like we want to kind of move things around, or like the story doesn't make sense, and like the panel doesn't work on this side or something, and we need to account for that. And so yeah, the idea here is to make this like as easy as possible to iterate on these, and then interpolate through them as this like story frame. And so
yeah. And
um,
when you're in storyboard board mode, like how are you getting those elements like on the page, so to speak, or on each board, I guess, so to speak?
yeah, it's a great question. So I kind of wanted to like step through that a little bit and
Oh,
just like
cool.
show
Nice.
at a very high level like how this is all working. And so hopefully the text, yeah, the text is a little bit bigger here, so this should
Yeah,
help.
I can see better. Yeah.
Nice. So going into the app, it's just a normal like React app. So that was kind of like my API use case. I think when I like try to think about APIs, I definitely try to go for like the simplest approach. Like no API is the best API, right? If I don't have to, you don't have to learn anything new. Like that's the best API. And so we have this scroll component that will subscribe all of the immediate children as scenes, is kind of like the idea here. And so anything that's an immediate child will be considered a frame in that storyboard or in this like storytelling experience. And so the way it's a bit of like a trickery that's going on to do this interpolation. And so we take each child and we read from them. So if we go into like the scroll component, we can kind of look a little bit of what's going on here. Um, and as these children come in, I'm using just a utility to flatten them. This makes sure it gets rid of like fragments and things like that, if they're present. And then we load the polyfill. So that's that scroll timeline polyfill I was showing. And then once that's loaded, we go through each child and we do this like subscription essentially. And so
Okay.
all we're really doing is saying like, hey, each child, like we want to know about like what child is in a scene. If that makes sense.
Okay.
Um, and so that's kind of like all this code that's uh, like yeah, accounting for like that subscription. And so once we have all those scenes subscribed, we turn them into, we store like these instances is what I'm calling it. And so they're kind of like a virtual component when we want them to be, if that makes sense. And when we're doing this scroll based animation, sorry, let me go to the top level. Um, we grab this first element and use that as a scene, and then everything else doesn't get rendered. So, or at least the idea is right now it's getting rendered. I had to like tweak some things, but the idea is that these will not be rendered at all, and we use them as information only, which is kind of an interesting approach I haven't necessarily seen for React,
Yeah.
but has worked out really well in this case. So to keep things performant, we can just use like composition and creating these components as just like an information layer almost of like, we want, this is how like the story is progressing, and we can change props at different times. And now we take all of that information, subscribe it to the scroll component, and then the scroll component will build up each interpolated like value between each value. So there's like a bit going on here, and it's a little crazy right now in the code. But I can show, where's the scroll? Yeah. So when we get to the scroll timeline, we have this, sorry, going a little bit fast. Just want to scroll up. We have a use scroll
Okay.
timeline hook, and that use scroll timeline hook will take a ref, and that ref is what will subscribe the child, that like this descendant, the scroll descendant, and then gets all those interpolations. We do measurements right now, so I'm working on a way to do like virtual measurements. So that's not in place right now in this prototype. Um, and then we can go through each transform, get those transforms, and interpolate between them. And then finally, we get our keyframes at the end here, which we pass the scroll timeline down here. So we have these scroll offsets, and we can pass each animation keyframe through. So it's not really anything too crazy going on, I guess, if you can imagine. It's a it's more simply just like taking each component and using it as a template, collecting like what that template's supposed to look like, and then now we can interpolate through each one. which also gives us the ability to do the like view of each storyboard because these are all components. Now we can
Yeah.
visualize them as a component on its own, as well as interpolate through them when we need to.
That's the part that's really compelling to me. So essentially you have that scroll component, so to speak, and then yeah, scroll component, and then within each one, each grid is your board, and then you're defining those out, and then the engine is kind of handling actually demonstrating those components or those grids or those boards. I've been mixing up the terminology, I know, but on the screen. And then when you toggle the mode, it kind of just like does the magic for you in a way,
Yeah.
which I personally love the developer experience of being able to like change my code, see what it looks like, change my code, see what it looks like. I'm a very visual learner and developer, and I hate having to like I'm gonna wait for this to like compile, or I have to deploy it, or I have to like it to see all the changes. And
Yeah.
so
That feedback
um,
loop, right? Yeah.
yeah, and so being able to literally be like, okay, storyboard mode. Okay, yeah, this is what it looks like. You know what? I'm gonna tweak this. Go to my code, tweak it. Immediately see how it looks in the storyboard. See how it looks when I scroll. Is like that's yeah, tightening that feedback loop is really helpful for me. As like that's just like kind of the way that I like to develop. And so I thought that was super interesting, and it is very smooth. Like that's the thing is it's like super smooth. So,
Yeah, it's super fun to kind of like see it all come together. It was like magical. I felt like when I first built it because I was like, wow, I can just like move through each frame. Like it feels magical in a sense. And kind of a
literal
different way, I
buzzard, like
think,
I
to
said.
thank you. I try to go like as ham as I can on some of this stuff. But yeah, I think it's funny because I think it can go so complex, and I think I've realized as I've gone through my the tenure of my career, um, that like simplicity wins, right? Like you want like I have all this weird nuanced knowledge of CSS over the years, but it's I don't know if that's like an accolade that I want, I guess, right? Like we should strive to make things as simple as possible, and easy to make these like to communicate really, right? Like that's what we're trying to do in this scenario. We're telling a story about replay and we want it to be very interactive and immersive. And the tech to get there is kind of it's fun, but it's also the boring part, right? Like telling the story is the most fun part of this. And so trying to
Yeah.
find ways to I guess like help with that part. That was my main task here of like we can iterate on these storyboards really quickly. And like the best part about it being in this like storyboard mode and they're just components, like it works with fast refresh. So I can sit here and just like unclick from storyboard mode, like jam on a component, check it, make sure that it looks good, and then click back out of storyboard mode and see like, oh cool, like now it's flowing. And just like have that really just tight feedback loop. I think that is kind of lacking from going from like design to development, then back to design, and then back to development, right? If we can get, I think the goal is if we have a tool that can we can stay in the same tool, right? Like like product as close to production as possible. um,
Yeah. And I love what you said too about not necessarily like knowing all those really random little things like isn't necessarily like you shouldn't need to do that, right? And that's kind of one of the things is when I first learned, building websites back in this is like I said, like 15 years ago or so, it was very much you have to know all these little rules and like you have to, it's like it was like memorizing a dictionary versus I feel like with the tools that we have now, it's more like a conversation guide where you're learning these phrases and you're learning these abstractions in order to be able to communicate and having those tools where I can say I want to be creative, I want to build this, and then not necessarily having to memorize every single little rule to make that happen, but being able to use a tool or a framework or a library, and then you have the wizard be the one who who knows all the rules behind the scenes. I think that's really cool because I think one of the things that replay really strives for, and it's one of the like that's like the main reason I kind of joined the team aside from the really cool tech, is that there's this idea of like we want to make development easier by making debugging easier and making it easier for you to understand what's happening in your code, right? And so um, I think that this story and what you're talking about kind of really exemplifies that. So that's pretty cool.
Nice. Yeah, it feels like it's a. I appreciate that. It feels. I was talking to Jason, our CEO, a little bit ago about this of like going through this journey and coming on new to replay. It's been like a lot, I think, to go into this marketing flow, but it's also been
Yeah.
great because it feels it feels genuine. I like it feels like the one of the bugs that we're going to go with and showcase in this is a bug I actually ran into while I was trying to develop this. So I used replay to fix it, and so it's a fun, yeah, just like a fun way to I think like go about this story, and definitely like a unique way because we are building a developer tool. So
Yeah.
yeah,
So
it's
you
gonna be
have a
awesome.
replay open here. Is this what you were the bug
Yeah.
that you were talking about?
No, so this isn't the actual bug. It's the scrolly telling
Oh, cool.
version I just showed. I recorded it before because I just kind of wanted to
Oh,
show off
nice.
like what we don't have to think about with this approach with doing like a more declarative approach. And so these are some console logs I had already had. So just to get me to this spot real quick. And so I just want to go back and show these like timeline values and also like how replay can help when you're trying to debug these kinds of things. But let's see where are we at. So yeah, if we go into like timeline, these like transform values, this is where we're building like each keyframe essentially um,
Is
between
it possible?
these.
Is it possible to make this bigger? I think if you just do like the plus, oh yeah, that works too. You can also maybe like just do like the command plus to increase the text size. I think that should work also.
Let's see. Is
Yeah,
that better?
that's yeah,
Okay,
it's zooming in.
just make it
Perfect.
huge.
Yeah, that's what I usually. I just like I zoom in and I have to do a lot more scrolling around, but it's kind of yeah, that's perfect.
um, yeah, so just real quick, like nothing like too crazy here, but if we go in and we can like check like what's the transform value at this time while we're like in this loop. Let's do I want that? No, I just transform. And so we can kind of look at like all these values that are getting computed. So we could just do like a Y, like so the Y value that will get like build out like translation layer. So you have all these like random values, right? Like I don't want to put that in like to my code. Like I don't want to like write that in like a transition state for CSS and say like, hey, like on the Y axis, like go across it like this many times. And the whole idea with this like declarative approach is that you don't ever have to write this, right? We just do we interpolate between those positions and grab those positions at that time. And then you don't have to think about any of this stuff. You get to just write the code that you want to write. So similar to yeah, just like the flip approach. Flip is amazing because now I can use CSS Grid. I can use any of the things that I already know how to use, right? I don't have to worry about a new way of doing things. I don't have to like overthink how I'm going to interpolate between these things once I get to the bottom of the page. I can kind of keep it very simple, and then yeah, use all that information that I have to build like this scrolly telling animation. And you can even imagine this works beyond scrolly telling, right? So we have these frames now, so we can snapshot test these, which is really great, and make sure that they're checked into like there's no regressions, like when we're pushing updates ahead, like in the future. And then we can even turn it into who knows, like a video one day. There's things like remotion, I think, that do like video. You can take a React scene and export it to a video. So if we already have all these frames ready to go, I think there's a lot more flexibility we have with it, and it's kind of just a fun way to, I think, showcase React components in a new light. I think it's so easy to take React components for face value, and they do provide a lot, but that like JSX and that component model, I think offer yeah a lot there. So just been kind of
Yeah.
having fun with it. I think in this like scrolly telling experience and seeing like where can we push the bounds. And then yeah, I didn't get to talk too much about accessibility and things like that, but this is another really like I think cool opportunity doing it this way. Of now that we have each component, if someone has prefers reduced motion on, and you don't want to show this scrolly telling experience, we can still show all of the frames kind of splayed out like that, and that might be better for somebody. Like right,
Yeah.
somebody might we can offer these different experiences, right? It gives us a more flexible model, which is really fun.
Yeah, so that was the next question actually is around, so we talked about developer experience, talked about performance, and then the accessibility aspect. And that was one of the things that was kind of exciting to me too, is once we decided maybe not to lead off with with the video, is that, you know, if we are able to tell the story with text and images and graphics, and that's something that becomes more accessible than a video necessarily. And so, especially like I said, because replay is visual, but it can also, you know, there's a lot to it that you can use to describe. And so that part, that's really compelling and interesting that this reduced scroll motion, it wouldn't break the site. It doesn't become then like a bunch of things in random places that are like unintelligible. So it reverts to the storyboard mode in that case, then it sounds
Yeah.
like. Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. That's the idea, at least right now. So, yeah, just trying to think of like the other use cases that that this could apply to, which is pretty fun. Yeah, I was very excited to think about the accessibility one because I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like a perfect, yeah, perfect for reduce motion if somebody, yeah, if somebody doesn't like motion, which I think a lot of people do, and especially I think in the context of scrolly telling sites, a lot of people I think get motion sickness. And especially the way some of these sites are done, like you can easily get motion sickness. So,
Yeah. Especially if
yeah, not
there's
that
that
like,
jank and the issues with performance.
yeah,
Yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
exactly. That's something. Oh, I didn't talk about that. So a fun thing, real quick. So you know how it pins to the screen, right? Like when it comes in. So it is a little janky right now with that because what's actually happening is it's pinning it to the screen, but it's actually animating against the scroll position, so it's fixed to the screen.
Okay.
Um, and so something I want to do because I want to keep that declarative nature. That's like the best part of it. So I don't have to say like that's the another thing. Like some libraries will say like, oh, you have to pin this section. Like, right? I want to say, oh, pin it to this section for this amount of time. In this declarative case, I don't have to even worry about that. I can just say, oh, if the same frame shows up again or the same elements show up in each frame, we can just hold them like you would in a timeline for like doing motion graphics and things like that. You can
Okay.
like I would set two keyframes and it would hold that keyframe across the timeline. And so we're kind of doing that this way, but in a scroll experience. So it's a
That's
little high level
awesome.
and maybe doesn't make sense, but I thought it was like a fun thing to not even like have to worry about things like that. Of like you just kind of build these frames out and interpolate between them, which simplifies things a lot.
Yeah, that's really neat. And so I did share in the chat too, the a link to your Build a Simple Flip animation and React article
Oh,
because I
cool.
found it and that was the one that I was reading. So I shared that. And I know that you were talking about how there's a code sandbox, like a demo of this. Is that something that is like available or is that like an old version? You were mentioning it, so I wasn't sure.
Yeah, yeah. Let me. I have one that's like fairly simple. So the one that I started when I showed all of you last week. So I'll post that one. It's still in like a these are in like raw states, but I think this one might be a little bit like better to kind of grok. Um, I don't know. I don't think I can add comments. So I
Oh
put it
yeah,
in
I
chat.
got it here. Oh, cool, perfect.
Um, so
Yeah, so
there's
I'll
that
go
one. I
ahead.
can even give another one. Like they're pretty raw, and like this is just stuff that I'm like hacking on. So,
Yeah.
um, but I love it. Yeah, like let's share it. Like,
And then to that effect too, it's like I think it's exciting to like maybe see people play with it and what they do with it or how it kind of works. And that's one of the things I like about working on replay stuff is a lot of times we'll be working on something and we're like, well, let's get some feedback or like let's kind of see how it goes. We have a lot of like experimental features that we enable for people like pretty early, and so I think that's super neat. So I did post that in the chat and I put it on screen. So if you um, are in Twitch or YouTube, you'll be able to see the comments. Otherwise, if you're on Twitter, grab the URL from the screen really and pause. Okay. Awesome.
and
Um,
I think just to add, we are doing this all in the open source, which is really rad. I don't think I've worked at a company that allows like as much open source as we're doing. So I think just peek in those repos in our yeah, if you go to our org and we're working on all this stuff in the open, so it's kind of fun to yeah, just see like what's going on under the hood and how messy it is. I would say like right. I think that is one thing I would love to say because I think we all have these. I don't know, maybe ideas in your head of I don't know. Every place I've been to is a mess, right? Like we're all trying to figure out how to make stuff together. And so I think maybe some people have it more buttoned up than others, but everything I've seen so far has been like it's a little chaotic, and we all try to get there. And so I think trying to that's been my driving force for trying to make it simpler for things like scrolly telling animations. Like it's going to be hectic. Everything around this is hectic. And so if we can simplify one part of it, then we can hopefully get to the end goal faster and it's not as stressful. So.
yeah, and that's something that like it took me a little bit of time to learn because I think when I first transitioned into tech and I was like, oh wow, like these people are magicians and wizards and like like they must like know exactly what's happening all time and realizing that every single person writes bugs, they encounter issues, they have to research, they have to look stuff up, or like things break, and so it's a little bit chaotic. And so that was something that really also kind of drew me to the open source was being able to see people just work in public and learn in public and what a real development project looks like. And it's not like the pristine, perfect, well-tested thing that that you may think it is to start out with. And so, yeah, and it's also really exciting because then you also get to see like how other people implement things and how they approach problems and learn from
Yeah.
that, which is really cool. So, um, yeah, and so like Travis mentioned, and I kind of put this back on the screen actually, is most of our projects are open source. So DevTools, our front end, is open source. The Replay Protocol API is documented. Our Firefox fork is open source. All of our kind of other projects are open source on our GitHub. And so we have had some contributors, we had people who hop into our Discord where we work in public. And so you can always come in and chat with us if you are interested in contributing or just want to talk to the team. And if you have bugs to share, we love talking to the community and working alongside them. So yeah, come hang out with us. We can nerd. I don't know if this is like, I've heard this phrase before, nerd snipe, and it keeps coming up at Relay, which is basically if somebody brings a question or a topic, we tend to like want to latch onto it. So because it's like, oh, that's challenging, or like, oh, I haven't thought about that before, or like maybe you can do that. I don't know. And then like a couple hours later, they come back and they're like, yeah, I built it. I figured it out.
That happened too many times to me. That's so
Yeah.
far.
So I think, yeah, that's like the team is very nerd snipeable, I guess. I don't think that's a word, but anyway, and we also love looking at bugs. So yeah, feel free to hop into our Discord and chat with us. And yeah, so Travis, just to kind of like, I know we're getting close to time, and so I want to just a couple questions. Number one is how long have you been working on this? Just to clarify, the scrollytelling engine
Uh,
part.
I started last Thursday afternoon,
Wild,
and then so that's what
wild.
I've gotten to.
That's wild.
Um,
Um, that's
I wish
really
I had
awesome.
more progress. So
No, that's wild. Like you're like, I built an engine in like a week. So, but yeah, that's really cool. And if yeah, people can follow you on Super Serious on Twitter, and like I said, you can hang out with us in the Discord. But anything else that you like to kind of add about what you're working on in the project or anything in general?
it should get pretty exciting here soon. So we'll have to hop back on maybe in like a week or two, and then kind of see where
Yeah,
progress is at. I think I got through like the more boring work of doing like this like engine and making sure we can animate between things. And so we're gonna have a lot of fun with just like getting all those storyboards fleshed out and actually and like everything animating in between and all that. So yeah, maybe we could show off like a high fidelity version here soon, which will be
yeah.
fun.
Awesome. That's super cool. I cannot wait to see progress. That's one of the nice things about these office hours being kind of every week is that we can show progress. Like Mark has been on to talk about like, oh, I started to do this thing, and then I'll come back on and be like, oh, it's done now, and we can like demo experimental features, and then once they're like actually released. And one of the things that we've been doing kind of periodically is our test suites project. So I've kind of shown a really quick recording, and then like a couple weeks ago we shared like a Cypress recording and what that looks like with Replay. And so making some more progress there and excited to share updates. So awesome. Well, before we sign off, I do have a couple of changelog updates from this week. And so a lot of them are kind of just like performance improvement related. So I will go ahead and share those really quick with y'all. First thing I did want to, so one is that we have made some, I shouldn't say just performance. So actually this is like a pretty big deal. So we actually have 5 times faster page loads during the recording process. So we're able, we kind of found something that an improvement that we could make. We were optimized our hashing strategy. So I'm going to share my screen because let's see, add stream here. Okay, so it's an open source issue. You can take a look at what we changed because it's a little bit above me. But we changed our hashing strategy, and because of this, essentially we're able to bring page loads down to to like 5 times faster page loads, and then also faster start times. So now they will start under a second compared to 23 seconds, which is the average before. So yeah, so a lot of improvements to performance, which is really, really exciting, especially on the recording side. we have been working really hard on the replay experience, the debugging experience, and improving performance there. We released Turbo Replay a while back, which allowed us to run sessions on multiple controllers, which really sped things up when you're viewing a session. And now we're talking about recording performance, which is, the other kind of part of it. And so that was a really big improvement there, which is super exciting to see. As the team has been really focused on those performance improvements and quality in general. So that was a really big win. I wanted to share that. Another thing is that we just have some kind of cool things that went out in our changelog today. We have a new console that we're developing. It's getting closer. Brian Vaughn has been sharing updates on Twitter. And so definitely recommend giving him a follow to see videos and updates and kind of code changes there. Also a visual regression PR that went out. So kind of using GitHub Actions to run playwright screenshot tests in Docker. So doing visual regression testing, which if you're not familiar, Travis, you mentioned this kind of like visual diffing earlier. It's take a screenshot, you take a new screenshot, the screenshot should match whenever you change your code. It's a test. And so what happens is that if the screenshot that you have and then the new screenshot were on different machines, or maybe they loaded like different operating systems, you can have issues. And so by running them in a Docker container every single time with the same dependencies, the same machine, the same browser, all that kind of stuff, that reduces those kind of false positives for diffs. So really cool kind of proof of concept here that Brian developed. And so you take a look at that PR if you're interested in learning more and how we implemented that. And so, yeah, the last thing that I wanted to share is we do have now, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. So we have some case studies now, or we have a case study. So replay.io/case studies. It's in a section in our docs. We're also posting it on our Medium blog, but really excited to share the story of Pantheon. This is a team that we've had for a while. They were one of our beta users, I believe. They've been here as long as this was before I joined the team. Really, really cool mission that they have around WebOps and kind of building out this really great platform for development. And so with that obviously comes a lot of complexity. Their scaling team. And so I know we know about the complexity of building kind of tools for developers, but then also kind of meta, they're building meta platforms for development too. So it's a lot that goes along there and a lot of debugging. And yeah, so the case study digs into how they found replay, what challenges that they were facing. And so we're really excited to share that story. And we're also in the process of kind of building out more, but you can visit replay.io/case studies to view that and check it out. And we do have one tweet this week. So I do like to share tweets, Travis. I'm not sure if you've seen an episode of this where I share tweets, but basically tweet this week. So Josh Goldberg received an illuminating view of replay from Anders Rake, and I have to say it lived up to the hype. Time travel debugging is a game changer. So Anders Rake, aka Matoush, is the debugging OG. Just knows so much about debugging. He wrote a blog post for us, or we're working on a blog post together about debugging TypeScript. He records videos of himself debugging on his Twitter stream. And he also is such a great replay advocate, and he gives us a ton of feedback, as always, in our Discord. And so he took the show on the road and was, showing replay off to Josh. And so, I was really excited to kind of see this. And you're very, very lucky if you get to learn about debugging from Matoush, I think, because
Yes.
I got to learn about debugging from Matoush when I first joined Replay. And he basically was like, yeah, let's just hop on a call, and showed me his process and taught me about answering my TypeScript questions. And so, yeah, it's a lot of fun to see that tweet. So great. Well,
So exciting.
yeah. Have you had a chance to dig into any of Matoush's videos or anything like that, or seen him on the Discord?
Yeah, I've watched a couple of them. And then personally, he's helped me with TypeScript issues a lot.
Nice.
So very
I love
thankful
that.
to Matoush. Thank you.
Yeah. I don't know how he does it. If he's the world's teacher. It's kind of I feel similarly about Mark Erickson on the team. Just somehow always able to answer questions, like post links, write content, make really helpful things. And so very grateful to the community for answering questions and always helping out with TypeScript issues. So awesome. Well, thanks so much, Travis, for being on the office hours this week. Super excited to see the progress on the engine and the site and everything. And yeah, excited to have you back on in a few to also check out, see the progress that you're making. Hopefully, like, we'll like, I mean, this is what you did in 1 week. I can't imagine where you'll be in 2 weeks from now. So
No pressure. No.
no pressure, no pressure. Yeah, but I have you booked, so be
All
prepared
right,
to
all
show up
right.
with the demo. So
No, it's good. I like it.
no
Well,
pressure,
yeah,
no
thank you so
diamonds,
much.
right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. And so, like I said, you can join us at replay.io/Discord, and you can also catch this episode and past episodes on our YouTube, replay.io/YouTube. So thank you, everyone, for joining, and we will see you next week. Cheers.
Thank you. Have a good one.